exciting. I'm always nervous every time we start these that no one's going to show up, and I'm afraid that people don't care. But it is so amazing to see all these familiar names and so many people that join us every week. So welcome back to those of you who are coming back for the fourth in our series of 8. Welcome to all of you who are joining for the very first time to our Eklund Gomes Black Lives Matter series. We're here to discuss humanity. We are doing this because we want to get better at fighting racism. We come here with open hearts, and this is a judgment-free forum, okay? When the whole Black Lives Matter movement came to a head, I guess, more recently, I started getting all kinds of phone calls and texts and emails from people throughout the industry, friends, colleagues, and most importantly, team members at Eklund Gomes who shared real concern and who just wanted to do something. So we set up a call, we started talking, and the genesis of all of our discussions is this series that you are now a part of. This is the fourth, as I said, in 8. The name of this, or rather the title of this series, of course, is The Human Stories. We've all experienced racism, I think, in one way, in one form or another. In this particular series or, installment, we will be talking about living while Black, the human stories. I do want to say that these are going to be personal stories that we would encourage all of you to share. They are also personal stories that the Eklund Gomes team members will be sharing as well, myself included. Before we get into today's installment, I do want to just sort of review sort of where we're coming from on this. For those of you who are here for the first one, you remember that we did Black Lives Matter, let's do something about it. That was a general introduction, basically, to what the series is all about and why we need to do it. From there, we went on to talk about history, and we did history in 2 parts. Of course, as you know, we did the pre-civil rights era, and then we did the post-civil rights era, and that was incredible. Thank you to our very, very hardworking and committed team of Eklund Gomes for doing all of that due diligence and that amazing research that was so eloquently presented. You guys are awesome. Big thumbs up. And today, of course, as I said, we're doing the Living While Black, the human stories. These are the personal stories. In essence, these stories are 2-part because next week will be the second part of the stories that we all have to share. And then we're really getting into the crux of what the series is all about, quite frankly. We're going to get into racism in real estate. And quite frankly, and let me be very clear on this point, the intention from Eklund Gomes was really to tackle the issue of racism in our industry. There's a lot of places that we could go when you want to talk about Black lives that matter. And we wanted to have a very narrow focus. And that focus is really relating to the industry that we're all working in. And as I look at all these familiar names, and soon we'll see your faces because this week we're going to all open this up to a forum. As I think about this, this is our problem within our industry. And we at Eklund Gomes find it our responsibility. No one else has really taken that responsibility. And we find that it's a very important one. It's certainly very important to us. And I think it's important to all of you who are joining. So we will get into the crux of this discussion a little bit further next week as we discuss the racism in real estate. Once we identify the racism in real estate through the personal stories, then we're going to go to the next part of the series, which is where do we go from here, right? Once we know that we've identified that there is racism within our industry, we'll go on to the next installment, which is where do we go from here? Where Heather will be able to questions so that we can better, so that we can improve the quality of living and working in this real estate industry, not only for ourselves, but for the future of us, for the future agents that may be intimidated to come into this industry because they don't see enough people who maybe look like them or have an experience like they are having in life. So that really is in my heart what I am hoping to accomplish with this entire series. From there, we are going to then go into how to implement change. Once we've identified that there is indeed racism within the industry, and also that we figure out where do we go from here, we're going to discuss how we can implement those changes. And from there, we're going to go into the preparation for the Black Lives rally that's in Washington, of course, on August 28th. You're all welcome to join us. We'll get into those details a little bit later, but this entire series ultimately is going to culminate with all of us inviting all of you to join us to march in Washington to stand up for Black lives, which we feel matter. And we hope that you guys will all join us, and we'll get into that a little further. Now, today's discussion, as I mentioned, is going to be a bit of a roundtable. We really wanted, by the way, we heard all of you when you kept saying, we want this to be more of an open forum, more of a discussion so that we can actually have our voices heard. This is the time. These are the personal experiences with racism. I want to make very clear, you may be Black, you may be white, you may be brown. You are welcome to share your personal stories. There may be people who are white who experienced racism because they saw racism occurring. They may have said something, may have not have said something. Remember, we're not here to judge. We're here to hear your stories collectively so that we can all gain a better understanding of just what kind of problems exist that we are personally experiencing, and an effort to curtail that type of behavior so that we don't have to have those types of experiences, so that all people feel that they can work in the industry that we're all working and thriving in. And again, this all culminates with the Black Lives Matter march that's going to be in Washington on August 28th. Now, I'm going to introduce you to 4 of our team members from Eklund Gomes, who are going to talk a little bit about the different types of racism. There are 4 types of racism, and I'm going to let 4 different team members basically define what those 4 different types of racism are, and then we're going to open this up for discussion. So I'll tell you how it'll work in a minute. Why don't you guys take it away from here and talk about the definitions of the different types of racism.
Thank you, John. I'm going to start off with the first one. We're going to start off with individual or internalized racism. This is racism that exists within individuals. It is when one holds negative ideas about his or her own culture, even if unknowingly. Xenophobic feelings or one's internalized sense of oppression or privilege are 2 examples of individual or internalized racism.
And we're going to go to interpersonal racism. This is the racism that occurs between individuals. It's the holding of negative attitudes towards a different race or culture. Interpersonal racism often follows a victim/perpetrator model. Examples include public expressions of racial prejudice, bias, and bigotry between individuals.
Next up is institutional racism. So recognizing that racism need not be individualist or intentional. Institutional racism refers to institutional and cultural practices that perpetuate racial inequality. Benefits are structured to advantage powerful groups at the expenses of others. So Jim Crow laws and redlining practices are 2 examples of institutional racism. Janet, you're on mute there.
Janet, you're on mute. Can you hear us? There you go.
Sorry about that, guys, again. So last but not least, we have structural racism. Structural racism refers to the ways in which the joint operation of institutions, for example, interinstitutional arrangements and interactions, produce racialized outcomes even in the absence of racist intent. Indicators of structural racism include power inequalities, unequal access to opportunities, and deferring policy outcomes by race. Because these effects are the root causes of structural racism are different. Structural racism is cumulative, pervasive, and durable. Examples of this include...
Okay, sorry guys, I'm going to interrupt Janet. If someone else on the team has that list in front of them, perhaps you do have it, Ellis. If you would be so kind to take over for Janet and just give us that definition one more time, because she's having a connectivity issue.
Sorry, guys.
Or if someone else has that definition handy.
Sure. We're at
thank you.
Structural racism. To just finish off what Janet was saying, because these effects are reinforced across multiple institutions, the root causes of structural racism are difficult to isolate. Structural racism is cumulative, pervasive, and durable. Examples include racist history, dominant cultural representations, popular myths, etc.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for stepping in there, Nadia. Okay, guys, now I'm just going to talk about, I'm going to set some sort of ground rules because there's so many of you, which I'm so excited to see. And we're going to see all of your faces soon if you do want us to see your faces. But here's what's going to happen. We want all of you, and we encourage all of you to share your personal experiences. I want to remind you that this personal experiences is going to come in two parts. Today, it's going to be the discussion about the personal stories, the human personal stories. Next week, we're going to be talking about those stories as it relates to the professional stories within the real estate industry. So try to keep all of your experiences that you want to share today to personal. Now, because there are so many, we are going to have to limit the amount of time that each of you has the screen. And what we're going to do is give everybody up to 2 minutes to tell your story, to share what your story of racism was that you had experienced. So the way that it's going to work is that each of you on the top right-hand corner of your screen will have the ability to hit the More button. When you hit the More button, you're going to see Raise Hand. If you just touch on the Raise Hand, Ellis, who you see on the screen here, is actually going to acknowledge you, and he's going to let you know that you are going to be up next to participate in the forum by sharing your personal story. And again, we're going to give you 2 minutes. Maybe you go a little under, maybe you go a little over. If you go way over, we're going to stop so that everybody else has an opportunity to share their stories, okay? Ellis, do we have anybody that's raised their hand yet that would like to share?
We do. We'll go to Layla first.
Okay, Layla, you have the floor. And Ellis, I hope that you are going to be able to bring everyone up on the screen. Maybe I'm going to change my screen view. If you guys want to see everyone, you can switch to gallery view and just keep scrolling through the pages because that's all the people that we got on the discussion today. I only see my team so far. Do I only have access to see my good-looking team?
No, I see Layla. I see her beautiful picture right up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm in the middle of watching the kids on the pool, so I can't do two things at the same time. But
no worries.
Hi.
Layla, you're up. You've got the floor, hon.
Okay, so 2 minutes. Can someone have a timer there?
Yes, we got one.
We've got
okay.
a timer.
Okay, hi guys. I'm Layla Yusuf. I am a real estate agent and a developer, a real estate agent in New York City with Stribling and now Stribling at Campus at Stribling. So my experience is actually to put out to agents. I just want to talk about my personal experience. There's been a lot in New York City, but we have a country home in Bucks County. And when we were buying a home, I had almost up to 30 or 40% down payment. The agent the seller's agent couldn't believe an African-American, actually, my partner is at home with a pool. So we were asked for all this financial disclosure, which most places when you are buying homes outside New York City, nobody asks you a lot about. I can give you a pre-approval and show you the funds of cash. So that was just between because of my color of my skin, did not know that we own our own company. We make enough money that we can own 2 homes, you know? So this is just for other agents who work outside New York City. And when you do see diversity coming to different neighborhood, please don't judge from my skin because you don't think I have the money. So that's just my personal experience. And I wanted to put that on the table. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I do want to just comment on that because I want to say something about this whole issue of racism. It's really hard to confirm for a fact when a racist act is happening. As you all know, the people who have experienced racism, and I myself have experienced racism, very often it's not so overt that you can say that was definitively 100% a racist act. What I hate about racism is that it comes in the form of this like innuendo. It's kind of like underneath. You get that cold shoulder. Somebody might ask you questions and you're not sure. Do they ask other people the same question for the same thing? It's one of those things. And I think, Layla, that's sort of like what you were describing in your example. You don't know for a fact that they ask.
Yeah. You don't know, fact, but it was kind of those underlining things that you as an agent, your community's fair housing rule, but it's just very underlining and asking more and more and more paperwork, you know? And so that was
you know it to be true. You know it to be
also
true because
a lot of people when this.
Yes, what I was saying is that you know it's true because you can feel it in your heart. If you've ever personally experienced racism, you just have this intuition and it really comes from your heart because we are human and we do feel these things and we're very intuitive. So we know. However, it's very hard to prove that. So that's one of the things that I hate about it the most. I hate that because it's like what allows people to sort of get away with this, which is why we all have to speak up and say something and do something, because we cannot witness these acts in public without calling people out, even if it doesn't involve you directly. If you are a witness to a racist act, I will encourage all of you to empower you to stand up and say something. And I hope that what we're doing here and what's going on across the entire world is going to give people the power to stand up and say something. Because remember, racism is one thing and anti-racism is another. And it's very important that we discuss right now the difference between the two. You may not be a racist, right? You may say, oh, I'm not racist. I welcome everybody. I have Black friends. I have brown friends. People say that all the time. But the question is, are you anti-racist? Because an anti-racist is obviously against racism. However, an anti-racist stands against it and stands up and says something when they hear something or see something. So we've got to remember, we're looking to be anti-racist in this society. And until we all realize and recognize that we need to be anti-racist, racism is going to be prevalent in our society for a very long time. Sorry I took the stage. I'm sure someone else has raised their hand, Ellis. I'm going to let you call them in.
Owen is next. Hey, Owen.
Guys, how you guys doing? Quick story. My story is like driving while Black. I mean, 6 months ago, I had my dog in the morning. I take him to the park in my car. I, walking for about an hour, get back in my car. I'm driving on the road. Cop car pulls me over, and I said, "Officer, what's the problem?" He goes, "I've been following you for like a half a mile, and you were swerving on the road." I wasn't swerving on the road. I'm saying in the back of my mind. Another thing too, which makes me think, if you're following me for half a mile, why wouldn't you pull me over sooner? To make a long story short, get out of the car, take a sobriety test. He asked me if I own any drugs. The only drugs I take is high blood pressure medicine. I took the sobriety test and he let me go. And it's just one of those things that it gets frustrating because, again, I'm 57 years old. I've been pulled over by cops at least in New York City, at least 8 to 9 times for BS reasons. So that's just my quick story.
Thank you for sharing that, Owen. I realized that I'm going to be in a boatload of trouble because I'm crying already, trying to hold back my tears. Thank you for sharing that. I don't know why this is like, I was hoping that this wasn't going to happen to me, but I guess it's happening to me. Ellis, I'm going to let you go to the next person in line. Wow.
Sure. Adrian, are you on, Adrian?
Yes, I'm here. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Hi.
Okay. Hi. I'm Adrian Roberson. I'm with the Logvinsky team, Victoria Logvinsky team, and Douglas Elliman. I just give a couple real quick instances, and I'm not sure if this will probably be more towards next week about racism within real estate. But a couple of the things I've had, I know when I'm on the Upper East Side, especially in different co-ops, I have to take one of my white male specifically colleagues with me. I've been harassed by doormen. They just cannot believe that I would actually have business in that building, that I would be going to see someone who lives there, that I would actually have a client. Even when I show them my business card, it's like they just still can't believe it. They can't get over the fact that I'm there. I had one time, went to a penthouse opening. I was taking video for my client who was a managing director at a hedge fund, very wealthy African-American guy. And the listing agent, you know, was like, "Oh, is your client with you?" I said, "No, I'm just taking video for him." She was like it was like a $6 million unit, and she's like, "You have a client that can afford this?" And I'm like, "Yeah. Why else would I be here? Like, I don't go window shopping, waste my time looking at you know, things like that. Like, of course I have a client, or else I wouldn't be here." And it was just the way that she said it was just, again, like, she couldn't believe that I would actually have a client that could afford to purchase that unit. I just put in a Black family in Valley Stream in Long Island. We all heard, I'm not sure if you all heard about what went on in Long Island with the harassment of a young Black woman there by her white neighbors. It's this notion that, you know, people say all the time, "Oh, pull yourself up by your bootstraps." And in the moment that you do, and you can afford, you know, whatever you can afford, then it's like, well, yeah, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but don't live here. And, you know, the Black family I just put out there was a little bit concerned about that. Their neighbors have been wonderful, but it's unfortunate, you know, if someone can afford it, if they have the money, whether it's the cash, if they've been approved, well, you know, by a bank, then, you know, obviously they're working people, you know, professional people. Well, you know, what exactly is the issue? And I know we all heard about what happened in Long Island with our industry colleagues and how they were practicing steering. And you know, like the first caller said, we all do affordable housing, a part of our continuing, fair housing as a part of our continuing education. And they specifically say we're not allowed to do that. And yet, you know, some of our industry colleagues are guilty of perpetuating that. And I've experienced it myself. My clients have experienced it. And it's terrible. And like John said, it's not something where you can say, you know, "I don't want you here because you're Black." They don't say that, but you do feel that, and you understand that that's the implication.
The cold shoulder. Adrienne, thank you for sharing your story. And yes,
Thank you,
we are
John.
going to get into this in greater detail next week. We will be talking about fair housing and steering and all of that stuff, in addition to sharing the personal stories of people working in the industry, giving testimonials really like the one that you just gave. But thank you for sharing. We're going to go now to the next person. Ellis, who's up next?
I've promoted everyone to panelists, so if you have something to add, of course, your story to the roundtable, please speak now.
Okay, great. So I'm going to give my story if nobody wants to go up next. Look, I'm a biracial man, and my story goes all the way back to high school. There are so many, but my parents worked really, really hard. My mother is white. My father is Black. I was born in Boston. It was not friendly at that time. Really, in some of the southern states even, the law said that Blacks and whites were not allowed to be married because, and this is according to the court document, said they were afraid if they allowed Blacks and whites to get married, what the outcome would be of their offspring. And they referred to people like me as mongrels. So I grew up in white neighborhoods because my parents always thought that at that time it was better to raise our family in those white neighborhoods because of the educational opportunities, because they really wanted the children, my siblings and myself, to have a better life. Now, as I think people have heard on this panel before, I am not too proud of the fact that I actually lived in passing for really almost the first half of my life. I did it really as a survival tactic. And one of the reasons comes in the example of the story that I'm going to give all of you today. I moved to a new town and it was all white. I was the token Black person. Even as a biracial, I was just too dark. And people eventually found out rather quickly that I did have a Black father. I didn't make friends so quickly because the people were not welcoming to me. It was 10th grade. And so I just sat alone very often at a big table that would sit typically 10 people. And I sat there with people throwing Oreo cookies off the top of my head. I did have hair at that time, so you can well imagine what it was like to sit there all alone in a new school with no friends and nobody wanting to befriend me, merely because I was so different and I didn't look like them. Although I do have blue eyes, as you can see on the screen. I thought that could work part of my passing, apparently not. But I used to have to literally I literally used to have to wash crumbs of Oreo cookies out of my hair because that's what my fellow classmates thought of me. So that's one of my early experiences. I'm going to let someone else go next because I think I talked over 2 minutes.
I could go. Hey guys, it's Nadia. I'm one of the panelists here. My story is just an interpersonal one. It's very, it's one of those everyday transgressions that happen. I was at a popular outdoor restaurant waiting for my friend to come back to the table. There was a group of white men sitting right next to me, and they were directing people, they were on the phone with somebody telling them where they, how to look for them. We're in the back, we're in the back. And then after saying that they were in the back, they said, oh, you'll see us, you could find us. We're sitting next to Keisha. My name is nowhere close to being Keisha. And, they didn't know that they heard that I heard them, but I was left feeling hurt. And even telling that story, it's like, you see it in action, you see how they refer to you, and they just found it to be so funny. So that's like a personal story. And I know it happens, like it's one of those small transgressions that happens to a lot of us, but I would just want other people to think twice before they say something like that out loud.
Nadia, that makes my blood boil.
That is horrible.
Yeah.
If I may, hi everyone.
Hi, Dana.
My name is Dana Walker Boyd. I'm from Staten Island, born and raised, and I have literally experienced racism in every way, shape, and form. Quite a few things. I'm not going to labor this too long, but we have been chased out of neighborhoods. I've had friends killed in racist towns throughout Staten Island. A dear friend was chased by a group of young men. He actually has the namesake of my brother, Derek, and he ran in front of a city bus and was killed. And that was just from a neighborhood that we lived not too far from. My parents are from Brooklyn. Well, they migrated from Philadelphia and Virginia. My parents had to use their Jewish friends in order for us to buy the house that we lived in for 28 years. They had to use their friends to go and look at houses and then make, I was young, I was in second grade, so I'm not sure how they made that transaction and, put the surprise, it's us, the Jeffersons and, not the Jewish couple. I'm not sure how that really transpired, but that's what they had to do in order to find a house that we could live in. It was sold to from an Italian man who ended up being great friends with our family. I grew up, I went to Catholic school in Staten Island, which was a pretty integrated school, but it's just been a lot, and I'm in real estate as well. August 5th will make 16 years that I'm in this business, keeping the lights on, so I'm very excited and proud of that. But I even experience it in my day-to-day real estate business, but I don't allow it to be an Achilles heel. I, represent and go out and get, multi-million-dollar listings. And I just do what I need to do. And this pause also, one other thing is that being a native in Staten Island, we've seen a lot of businesses close, minority businesses have closed. So a few girlfriends and I have created what is the Minority Women Business Association. And we are actually going out to try to secure different loans and grants for MWBEs. In Staten Island, out of the 62 businesses, only 6 were given PPE loans. So we're, charging that. And we've had some great meetings. I'll send some information. But John, thank you for this platform. It's really appreciated, and I'm very happy to be here. And I hope, we'll continue to impact and make change. And I call it out every time I see it.
Thank you. I'm going to call something else out. Thank you for sharing your testimonial there, Dana. I want to call something else out because it's really obvious to me and it's upsetting to me, but it's just part of the problem, but we're going to get there eventually. You can scroll through the screen and look at all the Black and brown people. I just want to know, where are all the white people in our industry? This Black Lives Matter is really about all people coming together. And it really sort of infuriates me. It makes me quite sad And I'm incredibly, incredibly disappointed. Now that we've opened this up, and this is why, by the way, I asked my team today to open up the screen so that we can see everyone, because I wanted to see what everyone looked like. And I do see white people, and thank you to the few white people that we do have on the screen today. But if we can all just kind of work together, and if the few white people that are on here could talk to all of your friends, Black people and white people, and spread the word about what we're doing, and maybe encourage them to do what you're doing, because you obviously get it. Black Lives Matter is not just about Black people. It's about all people coming together to fight for the rights of all people. But right now we're focusing on Black people, because Black people are the people who are consistently marginalized in the society and clearly within our industry. And it's not a lot of white people that care about this, obviously, because they're not on this forum. It's disproportionately Black, and I just want to point that out there. So, next
John,
person, take a turn. Yes?
John, it's Ellis here. It's Ellis here. I have a very special introduction to make. It's my mama, Mary Bullhite. So she's on the call, and I'm so excited.
Hi, Miss Mary.
Where are you, Miss Mary?
So if anyone's ever wondering, if anyone's ever wondering why I am so strong and fierce, it's because I have a Black mama. So Mary, I'm giving it over to you.
Hi, Mary.
Hey everybody, my name is Mary Wilhite, and I have been Ellis's mom since he turned 17 years old. I met him when he was working at Staples, and I was running for office in Cherokee County, Georgia. And he stood strong to the cause, which I didn't really understand how strong he really was at the time. However, he became my campaign manager at 17 years old. And all of the white folks here in Cherokee County, Georgia, tried to get him to change his mind and say that he wouldn't work on my campaign because I was Black or whatever the reason was. But he continued to work on my campaign, and I think that that's really what made our bond so strong. In Cherokee County, Georgia, we got a road called Sixes Road. And on Sixes Road, we had my signs up all over, up and down Sixes Road. They put nigger and they put coon all over my signs. Wow. And this is like in 2004, 6, and 8. And it was just so painful. And one guy, his name was Chuck Shy, he actually burned down his house, the guy that I was running against, and said that the nigger did it. So you think that you guys have experienced some experiences, like I could say you ain't seen nothing until you came to Georgia. Georgia has been hell for me. At least you guys had an opportunity to get into your real estate business. I never did. I got my real estate license in 1987, and they never allowed me in the game, period. So I had to go into other things like insurance or try to make money however I could, try to make a difference in the community. And I think that's one of the reasons why I ran for office. I ran for office because I wanted to make a difference. And I knew in this good old boy area, I may not have won that election, but I wanted to be a change agent and I wanted to make a difference. So you guys got one of the best guys in the world on your team, Ellis Bachman. And I owe him so much love in my heart and gratitude just for hanging in there and sticking with his Black mama. But they didn't know what they did. They made a bond between me and him that's unshakable. And it doesn't matter what happened on the face of the earth, we'll always be together. And Ellis and my husband, they're just like best friends, best buds, and it doesn't matter. I remember during one of the times with a Black racial, whatever it was, and him and my husband sitting in the airport, just cutting it up, chumming it up, laughing and all that kind of stuff. And people are looking at these two guys going like, that's a Black guy and that's a white guy. I mean, to me, it's like,
it was
what
right after
difference do it
Trayvon
make?
Martin. It was right after Trayvon Martin was killed, murdered. And Marvin and I were sitting at the Atlanta airport, and people were watching CNN, and it's all over the international news. And they're like, who is this, Black guy and white dude, like, sitting up at the airport carrying on? Like, you know, it's a beautiful thing, but, you know, Mary gave me something special, and, you know, we are like this, and I'm forever thankful for, you know, what our relationship that's been, you know, strengthened and forged. So, love you. We're here.
Love
and
you
we're
guys.
stronger
And
than ever.
thank you so much for allowing me to share my story. I swear to you, I can go on and on and on and just spill my guts, because you don't have to think about what to say when it's already in your heart and in your soul, and you know how you've been treated. So I hope that this is a time for change and a time to move past this whole Black thing, white thing, and just know that we are the human race.
Thank you
That's
so
all
much.
I gotta
Thank
say.
you for your story, Mary. It's heartwarming. Thank you for
Love
sharing.
you.
You're welcome.
Amazing, amazing.
And I'll just listen in.
Thank you.
Okay, Ellis, who's up next?
Thanks, Zach. I think Zach
Who's
is
ready out there?
I think Zach told me has his hand up.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Zach.
Hey, so this isn't an experience of my experiencing racism, but my experience of being corrected for racist actions, if I could share that. This was more than like 10 years ago in college. I came from a very, very white town. Very, very few people that were non-white. And I was taking a class about race relations, actually. And at one point, I remember I was speaking and I used the term mulatto, which I never had known was an incorrect term to use. And I remember right away, people getting very, very upset with me for using that phrase. And like, I guess I felt kind of attacked at the time, but in hindsight, I'm very, very thankful that people did kind of blow up in the way that they did, because number one, it corrected me of my action and let me know that what I thought was acceptable was not actually acceptable. And then number two, like I'm thankful in hindsight that people weren't like trying to take into consideration, I guess, my like white fragility, to use that term, of walking on eggshells and not being afraid to let me know that what I did was in fact wrong and why it was wrong. So that's just an experience that I wanted to share.
That is amazing. I'm so grateful that you share that experience. And thank you for being brave. Remember, I said that this is going to be a judgment-free forum, but I think people like you having experiences like that really make me feel good about what we're doing here, because that's exactly sort of the crux of the problem, is that you learned something, right? I often find that my white friends feel like what you said, you're walking on eggshells. And I honestly feel that since this whole Black Lives Matter movement came to a head recently, a lot of my white friends are like, I don't really know. I don't want to say something. I don't want to speak up. I don't know if I'm relevant. I don't know if people want to hear what I have to say. And people a lot of my white friends who I know are not racist, who may not necessarily be anti-racist, but I think that they're on their way to becoming anti-racist, a lot of them are just afraid. And I think that it's the fear that we have to sort of tackle, because once we kind of put things out there and educate people, just like yourself and your experience, so you learn. You thought it was one thing, you realized that that wasn't appropriate. Now you realize that people like myself are not considered mulatto, we are considered biracial. And biracial comes in all forms, shapes, colors, sizes, etc. So thank you for sharing that. Who's next?
All right, guys, I'll kind of jump.
Erin,
Erin wants to. Yeah, I think Erin Lucci.
Hey, guys.
There she goes.
There you go.
Hi, Erin. Hi.
Hi, Erin.
Hey. Sorry, I'm working from my bed today because I can do that now. I just wanted to kind of give an experience that I think is a positive one and one of real hope for the future generation. You know, I was born and raised in Manhattan, and I kind of come from the other side of things. And Zach, what you just said kind of spoke to me, because I was on like the other coin, where I grew up in the city and I didn't understand that racism was so prevalent. Like, I'm almost overly sheltered in the sense that I don't realize how prevalent racism really is in this country. So, you know, I grew up, two of my best girlfriends, who are still my very, very close girlfriends from high school, were Black. And I just never really had that filter in my mind of feeling like, I mean, it's a literal melting pot in New York. And I had Spanish friends. I mean, I don't really, I mean, I guess I'm white, but I'm Israeli. So I think that it's so important also, and especially hearing that story that just came before me, to remember that not everywhere is like New York City. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in South Carolina, and it's so different in the sense of, you know, that it really does still exist. And it's almost like it was shell shock for me, especially even when I went to college in a different town and people would say things to me like, oh, I've never met a Jew before. You know, I thought Jews had horns. I mean, I literally heard that from people. So it's so, I think this is so important also because, you know, it still exists, I'm sure, in so many parts of New York, but it's so important to remember that it really exists in other places in the country where, you know, it could just be that people don't know other Black people or other, you know, minority groups. And also to remember that, you know, things are really going to change in this country, hopefully with the next generation. You know, the more and more we instill, I mean, I have 3 kids, and the more we instill sort of the mindfulness and the understanding that it is an important concept to grapple with, and you know, like little kids they don't see color the way I guess we all do, and what's ingrained in us. So I think that we're going to see, and I pray that we'll see for the next generation such a shift and such a change. And I think it's amazing what we're all doing here and being able to talk about it together. So just wanted to say that.
Thank you for the silver lining in your positive message. It's encouraging.
I'd like to jump in quick, guys, you know, kind of thinking about what John said earlier and scrolling through. You know, when we first started this panel, I was so like blown away by the stories that I had heard from my fellow coworkers and panelists here. And I think one of the biggest issues with racism is that society puts oftentimes white people in white spaces. So like, for example, I grew up in a small town in northern New Jersey. No more than 5% of my graduating high school class was Black. And people in my town prided us on diversity because we had Asian people in our schools. Like, you know, so we didn't learn about Black history, maybe 1 week a year. You know, it was just a completely different narrative. So we have no excuse anymore. Like, there's no reason for us to say we weren't exposed to it, because we're all being exposed to it now by these conversations. But it is kind of a bummer to see, you know, so few white faces on here. So, you know, it's our responsibility now to spread that message to all of our white friends to join in the next couple of weeks, because more white people need to be moved by these stories. And there was a quote, let me see if I can pull it up, from How to Be an Anti-Racist, that said, "You do not take a person who for years has been hobbled by chains, liberate him, bring him up to the starting line of a race, and then say, you are free to compete with all the others, and still justly believe that you have been completely fair." And it's, you know, that kind of goes to my childhood. Like, all the Black people in my town, they lived in an apartment complex, which was the only apartment complex in the town. It's like, it's disgusting to think about, and then you have to analyze why that was. That was my experience with racism.
Thank you for sharing, Susie. That was an important one to share. Thank you for being brave.
Can I say something real quick? Quick?
Take the floor.
Or the screen. I just think that this is great, what you guys are doing. I think it's absolutely fantastic. But the lady that just spoke, it's been 400 years of institutional racism.
Yeah.
And they have what you call, and I want you to look this up because the chick is in New York, the 1619 Project, if you haven't heard of it. And the 1619 Project is when the slaves were brought here to this country. So in order to find out and figure out where we're going, we have to know where we've been. And that would just help so much. And our white friends who don't understand, if they have an event, it normally takes something to happen to them where they have an event in their lives to understand the plight of another, whether it be Black, brown, or whatever. So that's really all I wanted to say. So
Mary, thank you.
1619 project.
But thank you for sharing that, Mary. And in our last 2 series that we had, we broke it down. We broke down the history in 2 parts. We took 2 full sessions and we did pre-civil rights and post-civil rights, because we thought it was really important in this series to actually build up by giving people a little bit of a history lesson. And by the way, I also want to encourage any of you, if any of you want any of the backup data, we have all of it. Just DM us or just send me an email and we'll send you the links to all the data that we shared with you, because we have so much backup information that the team put together in their due diligence. So yes, Mary, you're right. You need to understand where you're coming from in order to know where we're going.
Exactly. So I'm glad you mentioned that, and I'll definitely get those links. Thanks a lot.
We can send you the, by the way, everyone, this is a good time to let you know, we have a TV channel called EGTV, and you can find that on YouTube. And we drop these Zooms, right? This entire series is actually on YouTube under EGTV. So if you did miss any of the sessions, or even if you were part of the session, you want to just go back and have a refresher, or if you want to hear it again, you can always find us on EGTV on YouTube.
Perfect.
All right, guys.
Hi, Ellis. Can I jump in?
Adrienne, you're next.
Hey, really quickly, I just wanted to piggyback. I just want to piggyback on a couple of things that Mary said. I graduated, specifically when she was talking about Georgia. I graduated from Clark Atlanta University in Atlanta, Georgia, and she is absolutely correct. I remember the administration telling us that do not leave Atlanta because the rest of Georgia was not Atlanta. And it was so true. Like, Atlanta is a pretty progressive city, but what my counterparts, like some of my sorority sisters at UGA and Athens and Albany State and the different parts of the state, they were getting a completely different experience with racism than what we were getting in Atlanta. And that's not to say that things didn't happen, but it just wasn't as prevalent. They weren't as overt as some of the other parts of the state. So that is absolutely true. Like some of it, it felt like there was just no progress at all. Like when you step outside of that very progressive city, it was just like time stood still. Like there was just no racial progress, no equity at all. And in terms of, the 1619 project, and, speaking about, those 400 years since Black people first stepped foot on the continent as slaves, there's a famous Malcolm X quote, and I'll just paraphrase, but basically it says, you can't stick a knife in someone's back, pull it out halfway and call it progress. And so for as long as we've been here, the progress that we've made has really been a short amount of time. And so you can't say, oh, okay, well, everything's fixed now. This is and they said a lot when Obama got elected, this is a post-racial society and those type of things. And it's like, no, like the problem is so ingrained in America, it's going to take a while and it's going to take real work to fix this. It's not just we passed a couple of laws and everybody's equal now and it's all kumbaya. It just doesn't work that way. And I just really quickly also, I forgot about an instance I meant to share when John was speaking about being biracial. I'm not biracial, but I had a conversation with one of my clients about, we were looking at opportunity zones, and I was talking about the neighborhood in Brooklyn in East New York being gentrified. And I was saying something about my community, and he looked confused, this white guy, and he looked at me and he said, but aren't you half and half? And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, aren't you half and half? And I was like, no, but it took me a split second to realize what he was saying. He thought, okay, just by looking at me, that I wasn't completely Black, which is not true. I have 2 Black parents. I'm like, I don't know what this guy's talking about. Okay, but I'm lighter. Okay, fine. But the implication was that, well, you're not a part of those Blacks because you're half something else. Like that, like the presence of European blood made me better. Made me different.
Wow.
It was kind of like, you're not one of those Blacks. You're not one of the real Black. You're not one of them. You're something else. And it was just kind of like, it just took me a split second to realize what he was saying. And I was like, I can't. Why would you say that?
And if I could just take about 20 seconds just to add to what Adrienne said about, like, we have the double O problem. We have Obama And we have Oprah getting thrown into our faces on a daily basis anytime that we talk about progress, right? Like, yes, there is Obama, there is Oprah, but we need to make more of them, and that's what we need everybody for. We need the solution of how we can all be the norm and not just use the O and the O as the exceptions that we should just like sit down and shut up.
And specifically in the real estate, but I just want to say specifically as it relates to the real estate industry, we don't even have an Obama and we don't even have an Oprah. Will someone please tell me if you've ever seen a Black person on the top 75 broker list?
Sure haven't.
Please, I mean, I just want to know, like, maybe
I
I'm
have,
wrong,
John.
but can you tell me? Yeah, no, but I'm biracial. No, but guys, there's a difference, right? I am biracial, so I identify with being Black and I identify with being white, but I'm a biracial person. I'm just asking, has anyone out there seen a person who is Black working in the real estate industry in New York that is up among the top 75? I mean, it is astonishing to me. So that is the problem. We don't have an Oprah, we don't have an Obama in the real estate industry. And again, that is our very narrow focus here.
Now we have to look to you to be that Oprah and Obama.
We have 6 minutes. We have 6 minutes left and just 2 people.
But to Nadia's point, I think the double O factor you're talking about, that's the problem. There's so few Black people at the top that you can name them. You can't even name all the white people at the top because there's so many of them.
Correct. And by the way, and the biggest problem with that is, and it's my biggest fear, and it's what really bothers me, and it's what motivated me to want to do this series, is that is going to prevent Black people from actually thinking that they can participate in this industry. And that is what keeps me awake at night. That pains me so deeply. And it makes me proud that we're doing this because we're going to change that. We are going to change that. I can promise you that. If you guys just stick with us and you see the series to the end, you march with us in Washington, we're all going to figure out where to go from here. We are going to institute new policies within this industry, and we're going to make people look at this in a different light. We are going to change that. That I can promise you. I hope you guys are coming along for the ride.
All right, guys, we have 5 minutes left and 2 folks who want to go, so I just want to make sure that Fabian and Marcia are heard. So Fabian is there.
Yes, hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. I'm Fabian, and actually, well, I'm from Colombia, and I've been based in New York for quite a few years, and I guess after many years, I realized that I'm pursuing a career in acting, and then I realized that maybe because of having a foreign accent, that was sort of my sort of struggle back there. And then I realized it was beyond that. Having a foreign accent or looking some sort of having a different look in terms of physical appearance wasn't only the challenge, but then I realized that even pursuing a career as a producer and working in media companies, one time I actually went to this production company. I applied for a job. Are you guys listening well? The thing is that I feel like the sound is breaking up a lot. I just want to make sure.
We hear you. We hear you loud and clear, Fabian.
We hear you.
Okay, cool. So one time I went to this interview and for a job as a producer. And then there was these, so one of the guys who actually interviewed with me was very nice. They looked at my profile. He actually showed me around the company. And then when he introduced me to his business partner actually was sort of very reluctant to sort of, very, very unlikely to be friendly. And he started to ask me these questions about if I knew how to do web design and a bunch of many stuff that wasn't really in the breakdown for the position. And I kind of realized right there that the guy just wasn't into a sort of including diversity in his company right away. So this is 2 business partners, one who was very open to sort of open up to diversity in terms of people with different backgrounds, and this other guy who wasn't really open to that. And And when he showed me around all the people that I actually saw in the company, not that they had a lot, but it was just everybody was white. And that was some sort of a message anyway. But that happens a lot, actually. I've been to different studios, and then all what you see is like white people, even behind the stage, I mean, backstage, and then you see a couple of black people, and they're actually usually the security guards. And then the Latinos are also on the side. And I feel like it's been changing over the last few years. But in the, I feel like in the media industry, television industry, it's very closed-minded still when it comes to diversity and when it comes to include people from different backgrounds. And like I said, I'm from Colombia, and basically we are really diverse here. It doesn't mean that we don't have racism in Colombia, but I feel like, I don't know, I always felt like having a foreign accent in a country like the US, it always felt to me like that was the color of my skin somehow. And
yes,
I
and it
always
is,
felt protected.
And it is, Fabian, and I agree with you. And I think that there are many people who share your same experience. So thank you for sharing that and giving us, you know, we're so focused on what's going on in real estate, but I think it's nice to see that this is, you know, obviously it's not nice, however, but, you know, it's good to hear your side, and it's good to be reminded that this is happening not only within our industry of real estate, but in all other industries. So thank you for your perspective. Now, we only have time for one more person. So do we have one more person lined up that wants to jump in?
Marcia.
Last one?
Martha, you there?
Oh, Martha, that's you. We're going to finish with Martha.
Martha.
That's for
Hi. Marsha. Hi, Marsha. How are you?
Hi, Marsha.
So I thought I put my perspective in there. It's nothing that I've heard anybody talk about just yet. I was thinking a lot about my experiences in actually the medical field, and my things that I would say the word is endured. Oh, and by the way, please let me know if you can't hear me because my internet.
We hear you.
Just fine.
Okay, so I was thinking a lot about what everybody was saying, and a lot about you know, the racism in the medical field and my experiences there, and I just wanted to like touch on that. I just like remember like basically it's a lifetime of constantly having my pain ignored and disregarded, and just the disrespect you receive when you are a Black woman. And I know a lot of people have heard about these experiences, and there's been studies and research about this, about how, you know, we're in this time with the pandemic, and we're in this time with, you know, all the upheaval going on. And right now I'm in Arizona with my family, and I have a relative battling cancer. So it's very scary for me, because not only do I feel like I have to contend with all those things, I also have to contend with the fact that I have an immunocompromised loved one, and the thought of going to a hospital is kind of traumatic for me. So I had, like, I think my first experience with.
Hold on, I'm gonna have to interrupt you because we've run over and your 2 minutes is up, but thank you for sharing the first part that you shared. Okay. I wish that we had time to have everyone speak as long as they wanted to, but we don't. But the point of this is that, as you can all see, we have many people in this forum that have had personal experiences with racism. We're gonna talk next week about the personal stories as it relates to the real estate industry, and we're gonna tackle it beyond there to figure out what we can do to change that. I wanna thank everybody for participating. I wanna welcome you to come back next Wednesday at 2:30, and I wanna encourage all of you to encourage all of your friends, Black, white, brown, or anything in between, to join our forum and our discussion. It does continue to grow every week. I love you guys so much. Thank you to everyone who works so hard on getting this done every week. Thanks to my team. Kiss. Mwah. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Have a good night. Good day.
Bye.
Bye, John. Thank you for everything.
Bye, John.